Peace. I'm Frank and welcome to the One Black Perch Publishing channel, where I share updates on our projects and reflections on different books on writing, editing, and publishing that you might find useful. One of my priorities is learning about the ways that the publishing industry is changing or has changed, whether that's through blogs, books, newsletters, podcasts. So I have a little library of books on the industry that's growing, and one of the first books that kept being recommended to me was Merchants of Culture, Publishing Business in the 21st Century by John B. Thompson. It gives a history of the publishing industry from its start to about 2010, 2011. Author of the book, John Thompson, is a professor of sociology at the University of Cambridge. He has a couple other books. His one prior to this is called The Digital Age, and his most recent book, which I plan to read soon, I actually have it already, is Book Wars. But on Merchants of Culture, there's a lot of critical praise here, some from prestigious academies, presses, journals like the Midwest Book Review, Penguin Random Books, Columbia University, W.W. Norton, and the Publishing Research Quarterly. So each chapter covers a phenomena or trend in the publishing industry, like the growth of retail chains in the 60s, or how literary agents became important to the success or failure of authors and publishers alike. And of course, the digital revolution. So if you're a first time or aspiring writer, the path to being widely read can vary greatly. And you get to decide what great means for you, but assuming you plan to continue writing, it's good to have a general sense of the industry's norms and flows, as well as what causes changes that are blips and what separates those from changes that are transformational. So Thompson, he shares reports from large and small independent and academic publishing houses and presses, Amazon as well, from copy sold, revenue, and a few other metrics, and discusses how it's inevitable that the profit motive has a overwhelming amount of leverage in a lot of the decisions because of just the nature of capitalism. But it raises questions like, how can we make more money next year than this year? What costs can we cut? How can we invest in something that will outpace the competition? These are just general questions, but when you think about it in terms of publishing, nothing about your prose or your plot comes up in those conversations. Right in the intro of the book, he breaks down the publishing value chain and roles that different parties play in a list of 6 ways that publishers add value for authors. The value chain generally illustrates the publishing operations from start to finish, which may help a first-time author determine how involved they want to be in the process, in each step of the process. So the value chain starts with content creation, which obviously is the author's domain. There's no book without an author to conceive it. So then it goes to content development and quality control, which is done by the publishers and the editors, to copy editing, design, typesetting, and proofreading, also done by publishers or contracted out by them. Into printers, which obviously is elsewhere. Not every publishing company has a print company as well. And then back to the publisher for sales, marketing, and warehousing and distribution responsibilities. That sounds like a lot because it is, but thankfully there's tools that can make some of these processes more efficient, and professional freelancers, honestly, to make a lot of this less stressful. So as you think about this chain, you might ask yourself, like, what areas am I proficient in? What am I weak in? Where might you need some help, some outside help? Would you rather deal with sales and marketing and not deal with cover design or editing? You just think about what your professional strengths are and what you're comfortable learning. But the chapter on the rise of literary agents was an enlightening one, though, tracing all the way back to the 1800s, about how the book agent was formed, along with some of the critiques made about them at the time. This one publisher, William Hyndman, was really vocal about his dislike for agents, and wrote an opinion piece about their emergence in the business, calling them middlemen and parasites. Agents find talent and bring them to companies or organizations, and I thought they were generally good for both sides. Think about sports in terms of this. The agents bring the talent to the organization, but not everybody sees it that way. They were seen as disruptors of the power dynamics in the business, overemphasizing the commercial aspect of it to the authors I mean, the publishers prefer them to just stay focused on producing material, just keep writing. So knowledgeable representation can be disruptive in negotiations, for sure. But this kind of disruption is clearly a good thing when people in your industry want to prey on your ignorance for money. But today, information is so ubiquitous. So what do you think a first-time author searches for more often today? How to find a literary agent or how to self-publish? So for more than 100 years after that, due to factors within the agent's control and others where they just happen to be in the right place at the right time, agents became power players. One example of being in the right place at the right time is the rise of retail bookstores in the 80s and 90s. You know, all those bookstores in the mall, the biggest of them Borders and Barnes and Noble, and then they expanded to having standalone spaces outside of the mall. I remember them cropping up all over big cities and near colleges and things like that. I thought then, like, what are they going to do when reading isn't trendy anymore? I mean, readers are a very small percentage of the overall population, general population. So if it can grow to fuel a trend like retail chains, then it can reduce. And what happens then? Since then, the agents became well known during that retail bookstore explosion, and their value became more apparent and attracted to authors aspiring and experienced alike. So bookstores became the rising tide that lifted all agents in a certain kind of way. That's mainly what's covered in the first chapter of the book, along with Amazon's takeover, because there really isn't a way to talk about book selling today without talking about Amazon. In a chapter later in the book called Extreme Publishing, he defines what the extreme publishing is and offers perspectives that drive the practice and issues some warnings about it. There's an essay in the chapter called Minding the Gap, and it's about one of the ways that publishing companies set their revenue targets and how it's communicated by the CEO, but it's coming from the parent company. And to get that new number, projection to 10%, let's say, that 10% may equate to tens of millions of dollars. So now you have to go, as the publisher, you have to go to your editors and tell them to find more titles to sell. And a lot of these titles are called, he calls them gap fillers. They usually look for books that are already finished or can be finished in a short period of time and that are easy to explain and sell. Some of these are memoirs by celebrities, books on trending topics within a given domain, books that are good as a gift, like quirky humor or self-help books, or books that solve a very specific problem for a ready audience. But that speaks to the large publishing houses. He interviews heads of well-established, medium-sized independent houses too. And one of them said that they're glad to have never been a part of those type of conversations. They prioritize the integrity of their literary pursuit. One director said that we own ourselves. If our sales drop, I'm paraphrasing, if our sales drop and our revenue drops, say 20%, I'm going to be concerned, but we're never going to acquire books that don't belong on our list. It's really that simple. And ideally, that'll be the type of language that you would hear from most publishers. But if businesses are about filling the need in the market, spotting opportunities to make more revenue year over year, then it's not going to be so surprising when large publishers practice this. They can afford to take these kind of risks, considering the amount of assets they have. Those assets might include rights to sell, license, or reprint the backlists of some famous writers. And then double down on that appeal, use that as a selling pitch. We can make you a top earning writer. For that reason and more reasons, they have the leverage to turn a lot of authors away. But in the earlier chapter, he tells his story about an agent who came to realize the leverage that authors have over publishing companies, despite this perceived position of power. He said that he went to a bookstore. It sounds really simple. He went to a bookstore and he said he didn't hear any customers say, "Where's the new title from Simon & Schuster?" or "Where's the new Penguin Random House?" Customers are asking by authors by name, not by publisher. So that's a simple way of thinking of it. But for him, that meant the publisher should be the ones chasing down authors and competing for their books. And then writers should feel empowered in dealing with publishing companies because of this. The last chapter and the conclusion talk a little more about the projected future of publishing. And one of the issues that he covers is diversity He notes that there are more books by diverse authors and more books on diverse topics that have been published in years that are recent to the book, around the 2010s, which is good, but that the real source of concern is not the diversity of books published, it's the lack of diversity of the books that are noticed, purchased, and read. So this highlights the importance of niche and independent bookstores who could spotlight authors and titles that don't normally get recognition, or topics that don't normally get the recognition, the public recognition that they might warrant. It also highlights the continued need for book communities to be built and engaged with. In conclusion, he poses a question. This edition was published in 2012, like I said, so think about how diverse books are as compared to 2012. He asks, is this era from 2008 to 2011 a watershed moment in a long history of books, when the key players in the field find that the customary ways of doing things no longer work, and they no longer have the wherewithal to meet new challenges that they face? So I hear that, and I think about social media. So Book Talk, BookTube, Bookstagram all offer ways to discover new books via book talkers, bookstagrammers, and booktubers, and them having public conversations about books, which are drivers and reflections of culture, and allow you to connect with authors and readers in an authentic way. And we have podcasting now too as a potential part of a book or an author's marketing strategy. He didn't anticipate podcasting, but did say that electronic formats will continue to be attractive to readers because books, they remain to be a privileged form of communication, and that people will always want stories and fresh ways to think about themselves and the world around them, with books still proven to be an effective and satisfying way of doing so. But I can't wait until I dig into Book Wars, the next book, which is specifically about digital publishing, its impact on the industry as a whole, and what the future might hold. But yeah, Merchants of Culture was definitely an informative read. References and notes are really great because they point you toward the organizations and businesses that track the industry as a whole. So that can encourage you or empower you to follow up, begin to do your own research, or at least follow some of the writers who report on how the publishing industry is doing. If you enjoyed this video or got something from it, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any future content. Peace.